Have you ever received a letter from a town that no longer exists? Welcome to SpookyShade, the place where stories go when the world forgets them. Here, we whisper the tales no one dares to remember. And tonight, we open the first envelope from a series that may rewrite everything you think you know about memory, place, and identity. Letters from Ederwild is not just a story. It's a haunting, a message from a town erased from every map, but not from the minds of those who once lived there. In Part 1, The Letters Return, we follow Ben Ashcroft, a man who receives a letter from his childhood home. The problem? That home, and the town it sat in, was supposed to have burned down 20 years ago, and yet the letters keep arriving, each one revealing a truth he was never meant to remember. So, open the envelope. Step through the door, because Ederwild remembers you, even if you've forgotten it. Letters from Ederwild. Part 1, The Letters Return. The rain had long since passed, leaving only the shimmer of wet roads and the clean scent of earth and stone. On the edge of downtown Portland, in a neighborhood where trees grew too close to power lines and porches sagged from age, Benjamin Ashcroft unlocked the mailbox he hadn't checked in weeks. Inside, bills, a flyer from a Thai restaurant, and one letter. No stamp, no return address. His name written in familiar cursive. Ben paused, the flyer slipping from his fingers. The letter felt wrong. Not ominous. Not threatening. Just wrong. He turned it over. The envelope was pale yellow, edges crisp, paper smooth like something from another decade. But it was the handwriting that stopped his breath. It was his mother's. And that was impossible. Ben hadn't seen his mother in years. Not since the fire. Not since Ederwild burned off the edge of the map. Not since the government trucks came, and the fences went up, and the headlines called it a natural containment breach. And not since he left behind the only home he'd ever known, a home that, he now realized, was no longer on any map. In the kitchen, the tea water had begun to hiss. He opened the envelope slowly, cautiously. Inside was a single page, handwritten. The smell of it hit him first. Not perfume, not ink, but the faintest scent of lilacs after rain, and something deeper, like books left in locked rooms. He read the words once. Then again. Ben, it's not safe out here. You must remember the orchard. You must remember the names. We're waiting for you. Don't let them replace you. M. Ben read it again, the words pulling him inward like a tide. The orchard. The names. Replace you. He didn't remember an orchard. And yet, as he stood in the quiet hum of his apartment, the radiator clinking in the corner, he began to smell it. Apples. Overripe. Wet leaves. Salt. That night, Ben dreamed of a place that was once familiar, though he couldn't say why. A path through tall grass. A mailbox that breathed. And voices, not calling his name, but saying it as if he were already there. He woke up sweating, the letter still in his hand. And beneath it, on the floor beside his bed, another envelope. Identical. Still sealed. His name again. Only this one said, Second Notice. Ben didn't open the second letter right away. It sat on the edge of his kitchen table like a warning, silent, unblinking, impossibly present. Every time he passed it, his eyes were drawn to the familiar cursive, the soft cream paper. It hadn't been there the night before. He was sure of that. And yet, there it was, waiting for him. Second Notice. Who writes second notices in handwriting? The day moved around him like static. He went through the motions, got dressed, fed his cat, who sniffed the envelope and hissed, rode the train into work. But everything felt distant, like watching his life through glass. Even conversations at work were off. At one point, his coworker Theo asked if he was okay. You look like you saw a ghost, Theo joked, tapping his coffee mug. Ben wanted to say something, to explain the letter, the smell, the dream, but the words shriveled in his mouth. Because who would believe him? Because maybe he didn't believe himself. That evening, as rain freckled the window panes and distant sirens wailed like old songs, Ben finally sat down and broke the seal on the second letter. Inside was another page. This one was longer, neater, almost rehearsed. Ben, you forgot your handwriting. You used to write so well. In the red notebook. The one with the wax stamp. We found it under the floorboards in room 6. The ink hasn't dried. The names are still there. Remember the mirror above the fireplace? It didn't always show your reflection. We think the house is waking up. We think it's remembering you too. You should come home before it decides to remember someone else. M. Ben's hands were trembling. He wasn't cold. He wasn't afraid, exactly. But he remembered the mirror. A long, rectangular slab framed in dark wood, once polished to a perfect shine, that hung above the hearth of his childhood home in Ederwild. He remembered it clearly now, except something was wrong. His reflection. In his memory, it didn't always follow him. Sometimes it was just there, watching. Later that night, Ben dug through the boxes in his closet. Old notebooks, scribbled dreams from high school, journals filled with useless poetry. But there, buried at the bottom of a dust-covered bin, was a red notebook. Its cover was cracked, its edges torn, and on the front, faint but unmistakable, a wax seal. He didn't remember keeping this. He didn't remember writing in it. But as he opened it, the smell hit him again. Wet stone, ink, and something bitter. And on the first page, in handwriting he didn't recognize, but somehow knew was his, were names. Pages and pages of names. Some were crossed out. Some were smudged beyond recognition. But one, near the center of the page, stood alone. Benjamin Ashcroft. Underlined twice. Ink still fresh. Ben closed the book, heart pounding. He sat back, the room tilting slightly. Then, from the hallway, the sound of paper sliding across wood. He got up, slowly, quietly, and there, under the doorframe, a third envelope. This one didn't say third notice. It said, "You're already here." Ben stared at the envelope on the floor for a long time before reaching down. The handwriting was the same, elegant, curved, and unmistakably familiar, like a song you've only heard in a dream. "You're already here." He almost laughed. The absurdity of it. He was in his apartment. Portland. Concrete walls. Flickering kitchen light. Cat asleep on the couch. But the letter said otherwise. And when he picked it up, the air changed. A quiet hush filled the room, like the world had held its breath. The faint hum of the fridge vanished. Even the sounds from outside, cars, wind, distant sirens, faded to nothing. It was like standing inside a memory. Except it wasn't his. Inside the envelope was not a letter this time, but a photograph. Old, sepia-toned, the edges curled and worn. It showed a house, Victorian in style, 3 stories, covered in ivy and fog. Its windows were tall, narrow, and far too dark. Ben didn't recognize it, but something in his body did. A twist in his stomach, a whisper in his teeth. On the back, scribbled in fading ink. "We left a key beneath the sundial." He didn't understand. There was no address, no map, just a house, a sentence, and the slow creeping certainty that he had been there before. That night, Ben did not sleep. He tried. He made tea, played music, laid flat on his back, and counted the ceiling cracks. But the moment his eyes closed, the dreams came. They weren't violent, not terrifying, just real. In the dream, he stood outside the house from the photo. Fog curled around his ankles. The grass was high and wet. And there, in the center of the overgrown yard, was a stone sundial cracked through the center like it had been struck by lightning. He crouched, brushed aside dead leaves, and found it. A key. Old, rusted, still warm. He woke up gasping. The key was in his hand. Ben dropped it onto the floorboards and stumbled back. How? He stared at it. The metal was iron-dark, ornate. It looked exactly like the one in the dream. But this was no longer about dreams. He called Theo. "Man, you sound like shit," Theo muttered. "Did you sleep at all?" Ben hesitated. I need to ask something," he said. "Do you remember Ederwild?" There was a long pause on the line. Too long. "What?" Theo finally asked. "What is that? Is that a movie or something?" Ben felt something drop in his chest. He tried again. Describe the town, the fire, the evacuation. Theo laughed uneasily. "Ben, I've known you for 6 years. You grew up in Chicago, right? You never mentioned a place called Ederwild." The call ended shortly after that. Ben sat in the silence, the key beside him. He picked up the red notebook again and flipped to the back. There, tucked between 2 pages, another photograph. This time it was of him. He was a child, standing in front of that same house. His mother behind him. A figure blurred in the window. On the photo's corner, someone had written, "Welcome home." The next morning, Ben called in sick. It was a lie, of course. He wasn't ill. At least, not in any way that could be explained on paper. But when your world starts folding in on itself and your childhood town erases itself from the memory of everyone you know, a day off seems more like survival than rest. The key sat in the center of the kitchen table, quiet and unassuming. It hadn't moved, but Ben felt it watching him. Not with eyes, but with memory. He tried fitting it into things. Desk drawers, the closet lock, even the antique chest he'd picked up from a second-hand store last fall. Nothing. The key didn't match any lock in his apartment, or in this life, it seemed. But still, it felt warm. Familiar. Like it belonged to a place that existed just a few inches outside of what he could see. He spent hours online searching for Ederwild. Nothing. No town. No census data. No fire. No photos. Even the address on his old-school records, gone. The file existed. His name, his date of birth, his social security number. But under place of birth, the field was blank. Not even an error code. Just empty. Around 3 p.m., someone knocked at the door. Ben froze. He hadn't ordered anything. Wasn't expecting anyone. And nobody ever came to visit. He opened the door slowly. No one there. Just a package. Wrapped in brown paper. No shipping label. No return address. Only one word written in ink across the top. Ashcroft. His last name. Ben brought the box inside. It wasn't large, but heavy. Something metallic shifted inside when he moved it. He peeled away the paper. Beneath was a wooden box, worn with time, engraved with symbols he didn't recognize. They weren't letters or numbers, but they stirred something at the edge of his thoughts, like a word on the tip of the tongue you've never spoken. He tried the key. It fit, and turned. Inside was a stack of letters. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some were torn open, others still sealed. All addressed to Benjamin Ashcroft, in the same cursive hand. He reached for the one on top. The date said October 12th, 1997. He hadn't turned 9 yet. He opened it. Ben, do you remember the swing behind the house? Where the rope burned your hands that day? The tree it hung from is gone now, but the swing is still moving. We think the house is trying to bring the tree back. Ben swallowed hard. The letters are anchors. Every time you read one, it remembers you. That's how you'll get back. M. The room dimmed slightly. Not from clouds or power outages, but from something else. As if the world itself had turned down the brightness for just a moment. Ben looked back into the box. All those letters. All those dates. Had someone been writing to him his entire life? He turned one over. Dated July 3rd, 2002. The week his father died. Another, March 8th, 2011. The day he was in that car accident he couldn't remember. The dates weren't random. They were his turning points. He opened one more. The mirror broke again. It showed someone else yesterday. Not you. We think you've been gone too long. But if you read enough, the house will let you in again. M. Ben looked at the box. At the key. At the house and the photograph still lying on the table. And for the first time, he understood. He wasn't being invited back. He was being collected. Ben spent the night reading. Letter after letter. He tore them open, each one a pinprick into a forgotten memory. The kind of memories that sat beneath language, felt, not spoken. Some letters were just a few lines. You left your flashlight near the creek. It still works, even though it shouldn't. The man in the hat came again. You used to call him Hollow John. Others were longer, detailing moments that should have felt alien. But they didn't. They felt like home. And the more he read, the more the world around him shifted. It wasn't obvious at first, but by 3 a.m., the walls of his apartment had become too quiet. The hum of the fridge had stopped. The traffic outside had faded to silence. The ticking clock on the microwave no longer blinked. And the shadows, they moved just a little too slowly when he turned his head. Ben walked to the bathroom mirror and stared at his reflection. He looked tired, pale, faint bags under his eyes. But then the lights flickered, and for a split second, the face in the mirror didn't blink when he did. He stepped back. His hands trembled, but not from fear. From something worse. Recognition. Because deep down, he knew that this was what the letters had warned him about. It didn't always show your reflection. He turned to the notebook, the red one. He hadn't looked at it again since finding the photographs. But something told him it had changed. It had. A new page had appeared. Blank, but for a header in the same cursive as the letters. Return log, Benjamin Ashcroft. Below it, a single question. How many times have you been here before? There was no place to answer. No line, no checkbox. But somehow, the page expected a reply. He touched the paper with his fingertips. The ink bled up from beneath. Letters forming without a pen. 12. Ben pulled back his hand. Stared. He didn't write that. But it was his number. Suddenly, a knock. Not at the door. From the inside of the wall. 3 sharp taps. Then a pause. Then 2 more. Ben held his breath. The knock came again. This time, from the hallway mirror. He approached slowly. In the reflection, his apartment looked normal. But then he saw it. A door in the reflection that didn't exist in real life. It was just behind him, where the coat rack stood. He turned. No door. But when he looked back at the mirror, it was still there. Dark wood. Brass handle. A small engraving above it. Number 6, guest room. Ben touched the mirror. His hand passed through. Not like glass. Not like water. Like slipping between pages of a book. He hesitated, then stepped through. He was no longer in his apartment. He stood in a narrow hallway, wallpapered in floral prints the color of old bruises. The floorboards creaked beneath his feet, not from age, but as if they knew he was there. At the end of the hallway, the door from the mirror waited. He turned the knob. It opened with a sigh. Inside, a room untouched by time. Faded curtains. A cracked vanity mirror. A small bookshelf with titles written in languages he didn't recognize. And on the bed, a letter. He opened it. Ben, you're almost home. Don't listen if the house starts to speak. It's still learning your voice. But it will try to use it. M. He sat on the bed. And for the first time since the letters arrived, he whispered the name aloud. Ederwild. The lights flickered. The room pulsed. And the floor beneath him shifted. As if the house had heard its name for the first time in years. Ben didn't know how long he sat there. The bed beneath him felt too soft, too old. As though the mattress remembered the weight of someone else. Someone long gone. But the house did not creak. It breathed. Softly. With the kind of rhythmic tension found in something alive, or something trying very hard to seem dead. The letter still rested in his hand. Don't listen if the house starts to speak. He looked around. Room number 6 was small, but dense with presence. A pale blue wallpaper curled at the edges. A clock with no hands ticked anyway. And on the dresser, just beneath the cracked mirror, another envelope. It hadn't been there a moment ago. This one was sealed in black wax, unlike the rest. He broke it open. Ben, room 6 doesn't remember you as well as the others. It remembers the other you. That's why it's quiet. You shouldn't stay here long. Ben turned toward the door. But it was gone. Where the doorway had been was now a solid wall, covered in pale blue wallpaper to match the rest. He reached out, touched it. It was warm. It throbbed. Like skin. Then came the voice. Faint at first, like radio static buried deep beneath layers of silence. Then clearer. A woman's voice. Calm. Gentle. Too gentle. Benjamin. It whispered from the wall. Do you remember what happened in the orchard? Ben backed away. There was no orchard. He'd never. But then he did remember. Fleeting. Sharp. A flash. A red ribbon tied to a tree branch. A child screaming. Footsteps in wet grass. And something watching them from beneath the soil. They buried the names, the voice said softly. But they didn't bury the roots. Ben shut his eyes. When he opened them, the mirror on the vanity was no longer cracked. In fact, it was perfectly clean. Too clean. He stepped toward it, slowly. And then stopped. Because the reflection wasn't of him. Not exactly. The face was his. The clothes were his. But the eyes, they were watching him. Not as a mirror would, but as a window might. The reflection tilted its head. Ben did not. Then it smiled. And behind it, through the mirror's window space, he saw Ederwild. For the first time in decades. The town looked almost normal. Houses in rows. Street lamps flickering. The distant bell tower that used to chime every Sunday morning. But it was wrong. The sky above it was too low. The clouds didn't move. And all the windows were open, but no one stood behind them. Except the mirror version of him. Still watching. Still smiling. Ben turned away, heart racing. He pressed his hand against the wall where the door had once been. Let me out, he whispered. Please. No response. He banged his fist once, twice. And the wall peeled open. Not like a door. Like a mouth. A corridor stretched beyond it. Familiar. Wood-paneled. Dusty. He stepped through. And the instant he did, the wall sealed shut behind him. Gone again. At the end of the hall stood another door. This one was numbered 3. And pinned to the wood was a single note, written on yellowing paper. She's still inside. But she thinks she's you now. Ben didn't want to open it. But he would. Because he knew, with a weight he couldn't explain, that every room in this house led deeper into memory. And that some memories weren't his to reclaim. The door was cold to the touch. Ben stood before it for what felt like hours. The hallway behind him was silent now. Not quiet, silent, as if all noise had been drained from the world entirely. He reached for the doorknob, turned it slowly. It gave way with a sound like old breath. And what waited behind it was not a room. Not really. It was a space shaped like memory. There were no walls, only blackness. But within that blackness, moments hung suspended like paintings on invisible threads. Glowing, flickering. Ben stepped forward. His feet made no sound. He wasn't sure the floor existed. And as he moved deeper in, the moments sharpened. The first was small. A rocking horse, with red paint peeling from its frame. A younger version of him, no older than 6, riding it alone in a sunlit room. The window beside him looked out on a town that didn't exist anymore. He reached toward the image, and it shimmered, flickered. The boy looked up, stared directly at him, and whispered. She came in through the mirror. The moment shattered like glass. Another image formed. A classroom, lined with crooked desks and dusty chalkboards. A teenage Ben, taller, angrier, quieter, sitting in the back row. The teacher spoke with no sound, lips moving like fish beneath water. Everyone else turned their heads toward Ben. In perfect unison, their faces were blank. Then one by one, they opened their mouths and letters poured out. Actual letters. Written notes. Hundreds of them. They flooded the room, burying desks, chalk, the floor. One of the notes brushed Ben's feet as it drifted by. He bent down and picked it up. It read, "The letters never stopped. You just stopped reading them." He let it fall. He wandered further. The final memory was incomplete. A hospital room. Fluorescent light buzzing overhead. A nurse asleep in a chair. A body in the bed. Ben didn't want to look, but he did. And there, in the bed, lay himself. Older, bruised, fading. Tubes threaded into his arm like veins spun from plastic and mercy. And on the nightstand, stacked neatly beside a faded photo of a house buried in fog. More letters, all unopened, all addressed to Benjamin Ashcroft, Ederwild, guest room number 3. The figure in the bed stirred. Its eyes opened, and they were his eyes, but different, foggy, forgotten. "It was supposed to be you," the figure rasped. Ben stepped back. "You weren't supposed to leave." She stayed. I stayed. The town stayed. The lights dimmed. The buzzing grew louder. "But you forgot us." Suddenly, the blackness collapsed. Ben was falling. Through letters. Through stairwells. Through whispers. He landed on something solid. Hardwood. A hallway. He was back in the house. Back in the corridor. The door behind him read room 3, but this time in his own handwriting. And just in front of him, another door. No number. Just a brass plate, tarnished by time, with a single word scratched into it. Origin. Ben didn't move. Because he knew, without reading a single more letter, that whatever was behind that door wasn't a memory. It was the start of everything. The door labeled Origin didn't open when Ben touched it. It didn't creak or shift or offer the gentle breath of old hinges. It dissolved, like mist at sunrise. And behind it wasn't a room, wasn't a hallway, wasn't even a house anymore. It was Ederwild, but not the Ederwild he remembered. The sky was a pale shade of parchment. The clouds moved in reverse. The streets had no signs. The buildings had no doors. And yet, it was Ederwild, or some dream of it. Ben stepped forward, and the ground didn't feel like ground. It felt like paper, slightly crinkled under his feet, bleeding faint ink wherever he stepped. He looked down. The road beneath him wasn't paved. It was made of letters. Thousands of them. Folded, unfolded, torn, blank. Each one with his name. Each one addressed from somewhere impossible. Benjamin Ashcroft. Ederwild, before it was burned. Ben, the house still remembers the other fire. Come back before the town decides you're a stranger. Buildings shifted as he walked past them. Windows blinked open and shut. Mailboxes whispered. Trees leaned in, their bark carved with dates that hadn't happened yet. Ben stopped before the church, or what used to be the church. Its steeple bent forward like a crooked finger. Its bell no longer chimed, it sighed. And nailed to its door was the biggest letter he'd seen yet. A full page, ink bleeding across the grain. He stepped closer to read. Origin report. Subject, Benjamin Ashcroft. You were born here, though no record remains. You left here, though no roads do. You died here, at least twice, though you keep returning. Ederwild is not a place. It is a wound, and every letter is a scab. Ben stumbled back, but behind him, The path had vanished. The town had rearranged. The buildings curved inward, subtly, as if watching. And in the center of what used to be the town square, something pulsed. A heart. Not metaphorically. An actual, massive, beating heart, suspended in the air above the square, with arteries like tree roots stretching into every direction. It beat once. Thump. And the letters beneath his feet fluttered in response. It beat twice. Thump. And the houses leaned. Ben fell to his knees. He couldn't breathe. And then it spoke. Not aloud. Not in sound. But in language. Burned into his thoughts. We remember you because you are written into us. But you stopped writing back. Ben reached into his coat pocket instinctively. Another letter was there. He hadn't put it there. But it was addressed. To Ederwild. From Benjamin Ashcroft. His hands trembled. He unfolded the paper. Blank. He looked up at the heart pulsing above the town. It waited. Ben took a breath. And wrote. I don't remember everything. But I know you're not just a place. You're something older than memory. I'm ready to come home. Please let me in. Ben. The town paused. The sky held its breath. And the moment the ink dried on the page, the letter was gone. The street unfolded. The town opened. And before him stood the real house. The one from the photo. From the dream. From the mirror. Ederwild hadn't been a town. It had always been the house. Ben stepped forward. One foot on the porch. Then another. And the door opened before he could knock. The front door did not creak. It breathed. As Ben stepped over the threshold, the wood pulsed beneath his feet. The floor inhaled his presence, as though the house had finally finished waiting. This was no reconstruction. No dreamscape. This was the origin. The place from every photograph. Every letter. Every version of himself. The entry hall stretched impossibly far, with portraits on the walls that seemed to shift when not directly observed. Ben turned his head, just for a second, and one of the frames blinked. He did not look again. At the base of the stairs was a mirror. Not cracked. Not faded. Immaculate. And in it, he saw himself. Himself as a child. Himself as someone older than he had ever been. All blinking at once. But only one version, the middle, turned and walked away. Ben followed. Each room in the house was lived in, but wrong. A dining room set for 13. Chairs too tall, plates too shallow. A record player playing no music, yet vibrating with sound. And through each open door he passed, a different version of himself waited. One brushing a dog's fur, though there was no dog. One reading a book written in reverse. One curled on the floor, whispering. We never should have written her name. He reached the stairwell. It was dark, coiled in shadow like the throat of a cave. A rope hung from the ceiling, thick as an arm, swaying gently. Ben didn't touch it. He went up. Each step creaked with recognition. The second floor was colder, and the hallway was lined with doors, each painted with numbers that didn't exist in this world. 0, -1, 14.5, infinity. He stopped before the one that had no number. Just a symbol. He pushed it open. Inside, a nursery. Clean. Sterile. Walls white as bone. A single crib in the center. And on the wall, floor to ceiling, a letter written in thick, black ink. Ben read it. And it read him back. Dear Ben, you were born here. Not from a mother, not from flesh, but from memory forgotten by others. Ederwild does not grow people. It remembers them. You are its favorite echo. The one who kept writing back. You left once. The town let you go. But now it's time to choose. The world has forgotten Ederwild. But you can't. Not anymore. Stay, and we will write everything back into place. Love. M. Ben felt the air shift. The crib creaked. He stepped closer, slowly. And inside, wrapped in cloth, was a letter, sealed in wax, addressed to the one who remembers. From Ederwild. He opened it. Nothing written, just a black dot in the center of the page. It moved. It spiraled. And the room vanished. Ben stood in the center of the town square. But the town was empty now. Truly gone. The sky no longer parchment, but ink. Buildings folded in on themselves. The church melted into the soil. The streets curled upward like the corners of burnt paper. And above him, in the clouds, Ederwild wrote its final message. In towering letters of shadow across the sky. Welcome home, Ben. He dropped to his knees, smiling, crying, and the house behind him closed its door. End of part 1. The letters return.